The NES is probably the console that comes to everyone's mind when you think of retro video games. And still, years after its release, we're still getting new games that are coming out in the homebrew community. I already did a video about co-op homebrew games on the NES, and since then, a bunch of new co-op games have come out as well. This is part 2, new and upcoming co-op NES games. As someone that loves old video games, it's been really cool to see independent developers pay homage to the games we grew up with. The NES look and feel is probably the most popular to try to replicate. One of my favorite examples of this is with the indie game Undertale. This was an amazing RPG that took old school visuals and added some modern flair, and the story is truly one of the best in all of gaming. With the help of today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, I would love to see more innovation in the retro indie scene. Southern New Hampshire University's online game development program gives you the knowledge and experience to create your own video games and help turn it into an actual career with opportunities for growth. You'll learn how to bring your characters and environments to life with 2D and 3D modeling, texturing, and game physics. You'll learn how to create dynamic and challenging experiences for your players with game AI. You'll learn how to create flawless user experiences by learning successful interface design. You'll also learn the 3 major computer programming languages, C++, C#, and Java, the pillars to every great game. Your courses are taught by faculty with real-world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people in the industry. And when you graduate, SNHU will still be there to help you as you begin your job hunt. SNHU is accredited, nonprofit, and has radically affordable tuition. SNHU was voted one of the country's most innovative universities by US News and World Report. Go to snhu.edu/classic, also linked in the description of the video, to see if you qualify for SNHU's game development program. You might be eligible for financial aid or have previous college credits that could fast track your degree at SNHU. Click the link to get started. The first game I want to talk about is called Save the Queen. It's spelled K-U-I-N for some reason. This is a Zelda clone, and it's basically the co-op Zelda game that we always wanted. This game hasn't come out yet, but there is a playable demo. I haven't heard of a solid release date yet. From what I've played in the demo, this game looks awesome. It has the same exploration as the original Zelda, as well as similar combat, and a second playable character. So keep your eyes out for Save the Queen. This is one of my most anticipated co-op games, honestly. The next game I want to talk about is called Crabbie Attack. This is pretty much like a Space Invaders clone, where you play as a turtle at the bottom of the screen and you shoot crabs as they come down. Gameplay is pretty simple here, but yeah, you could play it in 2-player co-op, so that's the reason why I'm talking about it. I do like some of the color choices here, and you have the ability to get some upgrades. It's nothing new or creative really, but it's a solid experience nonetheless. CatMercs is another homebrew that I just found out about. This one is an auto-scrolling vertical run-and-gun shooter. The game it's most similar to is probably Gunsmoke. To me, this one's just okay. It doesn't really do anything different. It's everything you'd expect from a run-and-gun shooter. You just move up, shoot, you can get upgrades like a spread shot, and you just take on the enemies. It's a pretty challenging game. I don't have much to say about this one. Copper Jacket is another vertical scrolling run and gun shooter. This one's a little bit more like Ikari Warriors or Commando, but actually good. The main problem with a lot of those games is the difficulty curve is just way too extreme, but this one actually feels playable, and especially when you have a friend with you to double your firepower. Although it's really not breaking the mold, it's not doing anything new, it just feels like a pretty solid game. You can drop bombs, there's boss fights, and you can get various power-ups. One of the best parts is there are lots of checkpoints, so if you or your friend dies, you just go back to the beginning of that screen. You're not going to have to restart the whole game, and you have unlimited lives. This one's definitely a solid run and gun shooter. They Came to Wreak Havoc is another top-down run-and-gun shooter, but this one's a little bit different, as you're free to move in any direction, and there's a bit of exploration. This game is a little rough around the edges, and it kind of just feels unfinished. The object is to destroy the enemies and hit the switches to unlock doors. So you're gonna do a lot of backtracking and moving around trying to find where the hidden switches are, and once you find them, then you move to the open gate, and so on and so forth until you get to the exit. It's actually kind of like the original Gauntlet. but this doesn't really offer anything in the form of originality, so I don't know if I would recommend this one. Arkade Rush is a game that can be played with up to 4 players co-op. This could be most closely compared to an Overcooked-like game, where you each have objectives and you have to work together. But instead of cooking, you're fixing up arcade cabinets. Just like Overcooked, you want to split up the tasks, and it's going to require a lot of communication between players. So make sure you have a team that is up for the task. This is a pretty cool game to see on this system, and you don't see a lot of 4-player co-op games. I would definitely recommend this one. Wart Wingding is a very weird title. I don't know what the hell that means. All I know is you play as 2 little worms, and it's a single screen action platformer, I guess. The gameplay is really simple. You punch holes through the wall so you can move forward, and you pick up the items. And then on your way, you destroy the enemies. Once all of the enemies and the items are picked up, then you can exit and move on to the next level. This game just doesn't have a lot of substance. There's nothing really wrong with it, but I got bored with it pretty quickly, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Miroh Jr. is one of the most unique games on this list, and it's honestly just one of the most creative co-op NES games I've ever seen. It's like a puzzle action game mixed with Tetris. One player plays the little unicorn and walks around and grabs snacks, and the other player controls the blocks as they fall down, just like Tetris. You want to get a full line across the screen for it to disappear and to gain points. Each level has different objectives. Sometimes you just need to survive for a certain amount of blocks being dropped, and then there's one where you just need to beat the high score. It varies from level to level. But the co-op gameplay really comes into play when the player that controls the unicorn can run around and kick the blocks into place. So if you have a little bit of a gap, you can run down and hit the block and fill in that space to hopefully clear a line. This is just a very creative game, and the visuals are incredibly impressive. Each level has different colors. This honestly doesn't even look like an NES game. It looks like it could just be a modern indie game. This one is highly recommended. Crater Song is a game that is meant to be played with 1 player using 2 controllers, but you can also split it up and play it 2-player, of course. But the point is, you hold 2 NES controllers vertically, and you control both players at the same time, similar to Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. But it works really well as a 2-player experience too. I like how the gameplay changes up. You have these third-person sections, and then you have top-down sections with puzzles, where each character has to stand on a switch at the same time. Then when you press select, you play music. And when both players are pressing it at the same time, it makes a pretty cool harmonized sound that I've never really heard on the NES before. Fire and Rescue is a pretty simple single-screen action game where you play as firefighters. You climb up ladders, you put out the fires, and you rescue the survivors. And you have a limit to your water, so when the water runs out, you have to go back to the fire hydrant to refill it. And then when you rescue the survivors, you have to take them one by one down to the rescue point. So obviously it works much better when you have a partner to team up and split up these tasks with. This one definitely feels like an early black box NES release. It reminds me of Donkey Kong or Wrecking Crew or Gyromite. This is another solid game. Morphcat Games is probably the most popular developer when it comes to homebrew NES games, and they've made some of the best co-op games on the NES. They made Space Skulls, they made Super Bat Puncher, as well as Micro Mages, which is maybe my favorite co-op NES game ever. One of the newer games they put out is called Mosh Lift. Just like all their other games, this one's really creative with great visuals and tight controls. It can be played in 2-player co-op. It's a tower climbing platformer where you play as these 2 rocker guys, I guess. You're constantly jumping up. You can bounce off the wall, you could jump on platforms. You could use your guitar like a hook shot type of thing, and you hook it onto a platform and zip right up to it. The gameplay here is fast and really responsive. The music is also a highlight. And as I said before, the visuals are really nice as well. The color choices of the backgrounds, the vertical parallax scrolling, and the animations of the character's hair moving around. It's really fluid. And the main benefit to playing this game with a partner is that if one of you dies, you have an opportunity to come back in a bubble. So your run doesn't just end immediately like when you play it in single player. But either way, you only have one life, and when you die, you start the whole game over. You can also bounce off of your partner, which can definitely cause some unwanted deaths. I have yet to beat this game yet, it's pretty difficult. But again, this is one of those top tier NES games. And this is just incredibly addicting. Again, I can't say enough about Morphcat Games, they just make the best NES games, honestly. And this is another great addition. Another addition to the Morphcat library is an untitled minigame. They're just calling it bonus minigame right now, and it hasn't come out yet, but from what I've seen, it's definitely promising. They call it a co-op boss rush game, and you can play it with up to 4 players. This will be included in their triple jump cartridge that they kickstarted. There's not a lot of details about this game, but the brief gameplay I've seen, it looks cool. Dataman is a new game that was just released on the NES. It's not unlike Smash TV or Alien Syndrome. It's a top-down, single-screen run-and-gun shooter. Unlike most games, the players don't have any life, so you can't actually die. The goal of the game is to protect the chip in the middle of the screen, which looks like a motherboard. The enemies all go there trying to destroy it, and whenever the enemies inflict damage to the chip, there's a little flicker on the screen. And at first, you might think that your NES wasn't plugged in properly or something, maybe there's a glitch in your ROM. It's actually a pretty cool effect. This was a nice touch. And if you do end up losing, you get an error screen, which again, I've never seen this done on an NES. It's really cool and it goes along with the theme of data and computers and stuff. You're able to throw bombs, and you're also able to increase your firepower by filling up the meter in the top left corner of the screen. So when your character does take damage from an enemy, instead of losing life, your meter just starts to decrease. You want to destroy the enemies and pick up the items that they drop. I'm not really sure what these are, but they fill up the meter. There's also some really cool boss fights as well. This is another top tier co-op NES game. If this came out back in the day, it would probably be a classic. Overall, this one is highly recommended. Another new one that hasn't come out yet is Black Jewel. There is a demo though. I like the gameplay and I like the art style, but the demo only allows you to play through 1 level so far. It's a little rough around the edges, so hopefully the finished version is a little bit more polished, but I like what it offers so far. Now the next 2 games are 2 of my most anticipated games to come out on the NES, and just in general, 2 of my most anticipated co-op games. The first one is called BioCreeps. This is a single-screen arcade-style platformer. The graphics are colorful and detailed here, but the standout feature is the way you maneuver through the levels. Unlike a lot of games, your attacking is from above. So as you jump, you shoot down, and you can continually shoot down to do multiple jumps and just stay in the air. I think this opens up the possibilities for some really fun and creative gameplay. And once you get the hang of the maneuvering, you can move around pretty quickly, and it just feels satisfying. But unfortunately, at least from the demo that I played, 2-player was not available. But from what I understand, the full version will include a 2-player mode. This is just another really creative and highly polished NES game that I can't wait to play. And the final game I want to talk about is Rugrats Adventures in Gameland. This is the Rugrats game that we always wanted, but never got. The cool thing about this is it's coming out for Steam with cartoon-style graphics, as well as an NES version. But if you play it on Steam, you can switch between the 8-bit style graphics and the modern HD style graphics on the fly. I thought that was a pretty cool addition. But of course you could play this on a real NES as well. There's a physical cartridge that's going to be coming out through limited run games. And hopefully you can get the ROM and play it on a flash card as well, which is what I intend on doing. This is definitely one of my most anticipated co-op games of the year. The gameplay is really solid. It's kind of like a mix between Mario 2 and maybe Chip and Dale. You get to play as all your favorite Rugrats characters, Tommy, Chucky, Phil, and Lil, each with their own unique abilities, and you can switch between them on the fly. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of creative level design and puzzles that will utilize each character's abilities. Anyways, I can't wait to play the full game. I was obsessed with Rugrats as a kid. It was one of my favorite cartoons, and it really would have blown my mind to see a game like this back in the day. So there are 16 new and upcoming co-op NES games. Are there any that we missed? And be sure to watch our last video where we talked about some of the other homebrew NES games with co-op. We probably covered a lot of games that you think we might have missed in this video, so make sure you check that one out. Thanks for watching.